Most people reach the end of each month confused about where their money went, even though nothing felt irresponsible. That quiet financial anxiety is incredibly common, especially for hardworking Americans trying to do everything right. If this feeling sounds familiar, stay with me, because this conversation might change how you see money forever. Before we begin, gently tap, like if honest discussions about money help you feel calmer and more in control. Leave a comment telling me which state you are watching from, because financial pressure feels different across America. And if you value clear, realistic financial thinking without hype, consider subscribing to see future videos like this. My name is Max, and I study how everyday people build financial stability through systems, habits, and mindset shifts. Today we are answering one uncomfortable question most people avoid asking until financial stress becomes overwhelming. Why does China save around 36% of income, while America struggles to save even 3%? This is not about politics or national superiority, but about understanding systems that quietly shape behavior. Because once you understand the system, your own financial struggles start making much more sense. Let us begin with numbers, because numbers remove emotion and reveal patterns we often try to ignore. Recent global data shows Chinese households consistently save over one-third of everything they earn. In contrast, American personal savings rates often fall below 5%, even during strong economic periods. That gap is massive, and it cannot be explained by laziness, intelligence, or how hard people work. Most Americans work extremely hard, yet the system around money quietly pushes constant spending. In China, the system teaches a different lesson: save first, then learn how to live with what remains. This lesson begins early, shaping how children understand safety, responsibility, and future security. When saving feels normal, spending becomes intentional, but when spending feels normal, saving feels painful. To understand why they win financially, we must look beyond income and examine habits, rules, and psychology. Many people assume Chinese families save more because they earn more, but income alone cannot explain this difference. In fact, average incomes in America are often higher, yet savings still disappear almost immediately after payday. This tells us the real issue is not income level, but the financial system people are taught to follow. In America, money is framed as something to enjoy now, because the future is assumed to be secure. In China, money is framed as protection, something meant to guard against uncertainty and unexpected hardship. That single difference quietly shapes how people think every time they receive their paycheck. Americans often ask what they can afford to buy, while Chinese families ask what they must protect first. This leads us to the first powerful principle behind Chinese saving behavior, known as the 10-to-1 rule. The idea is simple but extreme. For every 10 units earned, only 1 unit is meant to be spent. To most Americans, this sounds unrealistic, and honestly, very few Chinese households reach it perfectly. The power of this rule is not perfection, but how high targets reshape everyday financial decisions. When you aim to save 90%, even falling short still produces results most people never reach. Compare that to aiming for 10%, where missing the target often means saving almost nothing. High saving targets make spending feel heavier, forcing people to question purchases they once ignored. A daily $5 coffee suddenly feels different when viewed as part of your limited living allowance. Subscriptions, upgrades, and convenience spending begin to stand out as choices, not harmless habits. This mindset is not about suffering or punishment, but about clarity and long-term control. Chinese savers are taught to see money as a tool for safety, not a reward for surviving another week. Once that mental shift happens, saving stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like progress. This shift prepares the foundation for the next system that makes saving nearly automatic. Zero-based budgeting sounds complicated, but it is actually one of the simplest financial systems ever created. The idea is to give every dollar a job before you spend anything, leaving nothing unplanned or accidental. Instead of saving whatever remains, this system forces you to decide your priorities at the beginning. Chinese families assign savings first, treating it like rent or groceries rather than an optional leftover. Imagine you earn $4,000 this month and decide $1,000 goes to savings immediately. That leaves $3,000 to cover housing, food, transportation, and everything else in life. Because savings are already protected, spending decisions become more thoughtful and disciplined. You stop asking what you want today and start asking what actually fits within your remaining budget. This approach feels restrictive at first, especially for people used to flexible spending habits. But psychologically, it removes constant temptation by reducing how many decisions you must make daily. When savings are automatic, willpower is no longer the main driver of financial success. This system also protects against lifestyle inflation, one of the biggest wealth killers in America. As income increases, Chinese families increase savings first before upgrading their lifestyle. This prevents spending from quietly expanding to absorb every raise and bonus. Many Americans earn more today than years ago, yet still feel financially trapped and stressed. That frustration often comes from rising expenses, not from a lack of income. Zero-based budgeting creates a ceiling on spending even as income grows over time. It forces intentional choices instead of unconscious upgrades driven by convenience and comparison. Over time, this system builds stability without requiring extreme discipline or constant self-control. And once stability exists, people can finally think beyond survival and toward long-term wealth. Lifestyle inflation happens quietly when raises increase spending instead of improving long-term financial security. You earn more money, upgrade your life slightly, and somehow still feel just as stressed financially. Chinese families actively fight this pattern by locking in higher savings before lifestyle changes occur. This forces every upgrade to compete directly with long-term goals rather than emotional satisfaction. Next comes a powerful distinction Chinese culture makes very clearly: the difference between needs and wants. Needs are simple: housing, basic transportation, food, healthcare, and tools required to earn income. Wants are everything else: upgrades, status symbols, convenience purchases, and impulse-driven entertainment. The danger is not wanting things, but confusing wants with needs through constant marketing exposure. Take smartphones as an example. You need communication and internet access, not necessarily the newest model. Buying a reliable phone and investing the difference keeps money working instead of disappearing. Chinese buyers evaluate purchases by cost per use, not by emotional excitement at checkout. Shoes should last years, wallets should age well, and furniture should survive multiple life stages. Spending more once for durability often saves far more money over time. This mindset does not eliminate enjoyment. It simply delays gratification for better long-term outcomes. While Western culture celebrates instant pleasure, Chinese culture respects patience and future-focused thinking. Delayed gratification protects savings from impulse purchases that feel small but compound quickly. Over months and years, these small avoided decisions create massive differences in financial stability. This patience also reduces regret, because purchases are intentional rather than emotionally driven. When enjoyment comes from simplicity, spending pressure loses much of its power. And this naturally leads into another critical difference: how Chinese culture views debt. In Chinese culture, debt is treated with deep suspicion rather than a normal tool for everyday living. If something cannot be paid for with cash, many families assume they simply cannot afford it yet. Financing cars, vacations, or gadgets feels risky because it borrows against an uncertain future. This mindset forces people to save first instead of spending tomorrow's money today. Buying something outright may take longer, but it removes monthly stress and interest payments. In contrast, American households often juggle car loans, credit cards, and personal debt simultaneously. Each monthly payment quietly reduces how much money is available for saving or investing. Recent data shows average American households carry thousands of dollars in revolving credit card debt. That debt does not just cost money, it creates constant background anxiety and financial pressure. Chinese families avoid this by planning purchases far in advance and paying fully when ready. This approach creates a sense of ownership rather than obligation tied to monthly bills. Without debt payments, income becomes flexible instead of already spoken for before payday arrives. This flexibility makes saving feel easier because fewer commitments compete for each dollar earned. Avoiding debt also protects families during emergencies or sudden income disruptions. When income drops unexpectedly, fewer payments mean fewer immediate financial crises. This security explains why saving is treated as survival rather than optional financial optimization. Debt avoidance removes one of the biggest obstacles preventing Americans from building real savings. Without constant interest draining accounts, money finally begins to accumulate quietly. Over time, this creates confidence because financial control replaces financial fear. And this foundation sets the stage for how Chinese families think about long-term investment. Chinese families view education not as an expense, but as the highest returning investment available. Every dollar spent improving skills is expected to increase lifetime earning power, not short-term comfort. Parents save aggressively because they believe education compounds across decades, not just school years. This is not emotional optimism, it is calculated thinking based on income potential over an entire career. Imagine investing $100,000 to increase earnings by $50,000 annually for decades. Over a 30-year career, that investment could generate over $1 million in additional income. Few financial assets can compete with that kind of long-term, stable return. This explains why Chinese families accept simple living while funding tutoring, language classes, and training. They are not sacrificing happiness, they are reallocating resources toward future financial security. Education spending is treated like planting seeds rather than buying short-lived pleasures. The one-child policy intensified this mindset by concentrating family resources on a single individual. Instead of spreading investments thinly, families focused deeply on one child's long-term success. This created intense motivation to save, because every dollar felt directly tied to future outcomes. But education is not only about money, it also builds discipline, opportunity, and resilience. These qualities reduce financial risk by increasing adaptability in changing economic environments. Americans often underestimate education's financial impact because results arrive slowly and quietly. Chinese families are comfortable waiting years to see returns, reinforcing patience and long-term thinking. This patience aligns perfectly with their broader saving culture and resistance to impulse spending. When families believe the future can be improved through preparation, saving feels purposeful rather than restrictive. And this belief shapes how entire generations approach money, risk, and responsibility. Another powerful force behind Chinese saving behavior comes from marriage expectations and intense social competition. In many communities, owning property before marriage is seen as responsibility, not luxury or personal preference. This expectation pushes young men to save aggressively long before starting families or enjoying lifestyle upgrades. Housing becomes a prerequisite for stability, forcing disciplined habits early in adulthood. The gender imbalance created by past policies intensified competition, turning savings into social survival tools. With more men competing for fewer women, financial security became a visible signal of reliability. This dynamic created what economists call a savings arms race across entire generations. Young adults compared savings progress instead of cars, clothes, or weekend spending. Competition shifted away from consumption toward accumulation, reinforcing long-term financial discipline. These habits formed under pressure later benefited families even after marriage expectations were met. Early discipline created lifelong behaviors around delayed gratification and cautious spending. In America, social pressure often pushes consumption, rewarding visible spending rather than quiet preparation. In China, being known as financially responsible often carries more respect than showing expensive possessions. This reversal of social rewards supports saving instead of undermining it. When peers admire discipline, resisting temptation becomes socially reinforced rather than lonely. Oh, yeah. Over time, these social signals reduce the emotional cost of saying no to unnecessary spending. Saving stops feeling isolating when it aligns with community expectations and shared values. This cultural support helps explain how extreme saving behaviors persist across decades. But social pressure is not the only reason Chinese families save so intensely. Another major factor comes from how safety and security are handled at the national level. One major reason Chinese families save aggressively is the limited social safety net available during emergencies. When healthcare, retirement, or unemployment support is uncertain, saving becomes a personal survival system. Many Chinese families know the government will not fully protect them during financial or medical crises. This reality forces households to rely on their own savings rather than external promises. Medical emergencies can quickly destroy families without sufficient cash reserves. That risk turns emergency funds into necessities, not optional financial best practices. In America, many people assume Social Security and insurance will cover major risks. This assumption reduces urgency, making saving feel less critical in everyday decision-making. Chinese families operate under a different assumption: no one is coming to rescue them financially. When responsibility is personal, preparation becomes non-negotiable. Retirement is treated as self-funded rather than guaranteed by future benefits. This mindset encourages long-term planning, starting early in adult life. Without safety nets, financial mistakes carry heavier consequences, reinforcing disciplined behavior. Saving stops being about optimization and becomes about dignity and independence. Families plan for worst-case scenarios rather than hoping they never happen. This constant awareness shapes cautious spending habits across generations. When security depends on savings, impulse spending feels irresponsible rather than harmless. Over time, this creates a culture where financial caution is respected and encouraged. Americans often save reactively, while Chinese families save proactively for uncertainty. But beyond fear, another powerful psychological factor keeps saving sustainable long-term. Chinese families approach saving as a shared project, not a private struggle carried by one person alone. Money conversations happen openly, with children understanding goals, progress, and sacrifices involved. This transparency turns saving into teamwork rather than silent deprivation or hidden resentment. When everyone knows the plan, daily spending decisions naturally align with long-term family priorities. Teenagers who see education savings grow are less likely to demand expensive, unnecessary purchases. Spouses cooperate more easily when financial trade-offs are clearly connected to shared outcomes. In contrast, many American households avoid money conversations, treating finances like uncomfortable secrets. This silence creates confusion, stress, and arguments about where money actually goes. Chinese families eliminate that confusion by tracking spending carefully and reviewing it regularly. Knowing exactly where money goes reduces anxiety because uncertainty itself is removed. Another hidden advantage comes from reducing decision fatigue around everyday spending choices. Instead of debating each purchase, families follow routines that limit impulsive decision-making. Shopping at familiar stores and buying consistent products conserves mental energy for important choices. Fewer decisions mean less temptation, making saving easier without constant willpower battles. This system-based approach explains why extreme saving does not feel exhausting over time. Saving becomes automatic, while spending requires conscious justification rather than emotional reaction. Over years, these habits build confidence because financial control replaces financial confusion. Control creates peace of mind, which many families value more than short-term consumption pleasure. This psychological foundation allows high saving rates to feel sustainable instead of punishing. And with that mindset in place, applying these ideas becomes surprisingly realistic. Applying Chinese saving principles does not require extreme sacrifice, but intentional changes in how you structure money. You do not need to save 90% to benefit. Even modest improvements create powerful long-term momentum. Start by saving first, tracking spending honestly, and questioning habits that quietly drain financial stability. Small systems consistently applied matter far more than dramatic short bursts of discipline. The real lesson from China is not frugality, but control over money before money controls you. Financial freedom grows when spending becomes intentional and saving becomes automatic. Over time, this shift reduces stress, builds confidence, and creates choices previously unavailable. Wealth is not built by earning more alone, but by protecting what you already earn. When your system improves, your income finally has room to work for you. This is how quiet financial progress replaces constant financial anxiety. If this perspective helped you see money differently, gently tap like to support honest conversations like this. Share this video with someone who feels stuck financially but does not know why. Leave a comment about one habit you might change after watching today. These small reflections often mark the beginning of meaningful financial shifts. Remember, saving is not deprivation, it is preparation for a more flexible future. The goal is not perfection, but progress that compounds quietly over time. Financial peace rarely arrives suddenly. It builds gradually through consistent systems. When you control money, you regain time, energy, and freedom to choose differently. That is why China wins at saving, and why these ideas still matter anywhere else. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next conversation about money.